Okay, so welcome everybody. This is going to be our last meeting before we break for Pesach, obviously. And then we'll continue after Pesach. We'll let you know, the Sunday after Pesach. It's probably Pesach ends on Sunday or on Shabbat. Not sure, probably Shabbat. So it'll be, the following Sunday that we'll start up again. So last week we started chapter 2, and we're going to begin this class by just doing a review of chapter 2. So I'm going to share the image that we made for you, just to remind you where we are in the scheme of things. So this was the Pharos chart that we looked at. And we showed you that there's Keser, Chochmah, and Bina, which was called Gimel Reshin, the 3 heads. And then Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet, which is, the acronym is Chagat, literally Chet for Chesed, the Gimel for Gevurah, and the Taf for Tiferes. That's Chagat. And then you have Netzach, Hod, and Yesod for Nehi. And right now we're not really looking at Malchus, because Malchus is action. And we're really still looking at how things are working in the intellect. So then we looked at what these things mean. We were looking at the 3 levels of Chet Seichel in Chochmah, how Gimel Reshin functions within Chochmah. And we spoke about how it was the conceptualization stage, like studying just for the sake of knowledge, not for application. And then the Chagat was the decision-making. Am I going to do it? You have a great idea. We all have this, right? We have lots of ideas. But then you have to decide, wow, should I do this? Should I consider actually bringing this idea into reality? And I have to decide yes, no, and I consider all the different options. That's the chesed and the gevurah, the decision-making, the yes or no, looking at it will, different aspects of it, weighing it up. We also spoke about it in terms of a psaktin. The decision-making about a psaktin, is something allowed, which is chesed, or is it not allowed, the gevurah? And that was the chagat process. And then the he process was about how to actualize this idea. But we're still talking about the fact that we're not actually actualizing it, but we're thinking about how to actualize it. In Chagat, we were thinking about whether to actualize it. And then we go down to Nehi, and our brain starts thinking, like, what do I need to do to actualize it? So that was the process that we were talking about in our brain. And before we go forward, we decided that really, to understand the second paragraph, we need to make sure that those 3 levels are very clear for you. So Mila created a worksheet. Let me just see. Mila, do you want to share that worksheet?
Yes, 1 second.
And also just share it. Did you share it on the chat? People can download it.
1 second. Just
yeah.
I shared it in a group, in our WhatsApp group. So you have that. Let me just put it out for the chat as well. I'm just not sure where the chat is. And here we go. I got it. I got it.
And just for the people who are watching, if you want to share it on the screen as well,
Yes.
who are watching the video. So what we're going to do is we're going to let you work on this worksheet for about 10 minutes, and then you'll go into breakout rooms and just compare notes with each other. And then we'll come back, we'll assume you got the answers since you have the answers in the text. So you're looking at paragraph 1, answering the questions for yourself, and then working with a partner to just verify it. And then we'll come back and do paragraph 2, which takes us deeper into these ideas.
Okay, so we're gonna, let's read the questions. So in case somebody, has any, now, what are the 3 levels of intellect, seichel, described in a text? And we went through 3 levels of intellect, which Naria summarized now. And how does the study of the heavenly spheres illustrate the first level of intellect? How is studying the structure of a building without the intention to build is classified? What is the difference between the 3 heads of Chachma and Nihi of Chachma? And how does the text describe the transition from contemplating a concept to applying it in a practical way? And what does it mean when a person understands halacha but cannot give a practical ruling? What level does it correspond to? So these are the 6 questions that are the main questions. And we're going to be focusing on these questions. Question number 7, 8, 9, and 10. These are something that you could take home and think about it, between your Pesach cleaning or whatever else, if you'll have a few minutes, you could delve in it. But we in this class are going to be concentrating mainly on first 6 questions.
Okay, so I'm going to just pause the recording and we'll give you about 10 minutes just to look at the text of paragraph 1 and answer these questions for yourself. And then we'll put you into breakout rooms to discuss it with each other. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Okay, so does anybody have any actual questions, not the questions of the worksheet? Because if you didn't figure out the questions of the worksheet, you just need to go back to the text. But do you have any questions briefly, on anything in the paragraph that was not understandable?
I have a question about when it comes to, it was one of the questions on the worksheet about actually bringing it into the transition, bringing it into physical action. So, I mean, what I have is, in my notes, is the Tokev Dat, which is Nechi of Chagat of Chachma, is intellectual ability that leads to practical action. So what do you say about that?
Mila, what was that answer? Because that was the one question that was a little bit not so clear.
Which question?
I think it's 6. I don't have my questions in front of me, but I think, wait, let's see, wait.
What does this mean?
No,
when a person
5.
understands-
I think it's 5.
How does the text describe the transition from
Yeah.
contemplating a concept to applying it to practical way? So the key word
Right.
here is transition, right? So in order for me, coming from theoretical learning into practical application, what is there in between?
It's
Like, why
decision.
would some amazing, beautiful, like exactly, decision. I first need to make a decision. I am going on that diet before I'm going to be going on the diet, before I'm going to be practicing the diet, right? I first need to make a decision. I'm going to be drinking 12 cups of water, although I hate water, okay? Unless I'm thirsty. I first have to make a decision that that's what I want before I'm going to be practicing it. Right? We usually don't think that way, but it's actually amazing. I mean, this chapter really teaches us how we should be practicing things. First is to make a decision. Is this like, unless you're trying it out, there is a thing about, okay, let me just try it out. But here, like before you try out something, like, do you really, I mean, like you going for it? Like, really? Like, for example, like, would you be dating if you didn't make a decision that you need to get married? That's a perfect example.
But wait, so that answers the question of the transition is just
Transition
the
has to be a
decision?
decision. Yeah, decision.
Okay, but then there's another step after that. The actual is just the practical application itself.
No, but that's what
Is
it is.
doing
Like,
it.
for example, people know that there's a concept of getting married. One day you need to be getting married. Why not? It happens to all of us, right? Then there is a specific girl that your mom wants to go out, or specific guy that somebody suggests. That's a practical application. It's a practical steps of actually choosing a spouse, right? We all agree that you really need to put on the best of your clothing, step out, ask a couple of questions, figure out you like him, her, whatever the story is. But before that, you have to make a decision if you're actually getting married. Like right now, you're really going to be getting married. It's not just dating. I know in the not from world, people just date to hang out, right? They're not really thinking about getting married in the near future. They're obviously one day gonna get married, but they start dating when they're 15 and they get married when they're 30. We're not talking about this type of dating. We're talking about from world, right? When you're actually gonna get married. So if a person didn't make a decision, if he is ready to get married, like literally getting married, right? You're waking up next day, you're sitting like there's somebody in your room forever. Then I'm moving out. Okay. So that has to first come a decision that yes. Oh, now the Rebbe says that to make that decision, you also have to have a practical person. Like, don't bother your children about theoretical getting married if you don't have anybody in mind. Okay? But at the same time, based on our Seder Ishtalshalas, that would be Chabad, would be Kachab, I'm sorry, would be just like thinking about the concept of getting married. Yeah, they know it since they're 5, right? And sometimes you ask a 5-year-old girl that really wants to have a baby and she realizes that she needs to get married first, she's ready to get married, right? They say that the woman lies 2 times in her life. One, when she's 5, that she wants to get married, and when she's 18, when she says that she doesn't want to get married. Okay, so that's what it is, right? So yeah, she wants to get married for sure. Like, you ask any 5-year-old girl, they would put things in her bellies and she's gonna pretend that she's carrying a baby and nursing and all that. Now, that's a play. But yeah, theoretically, but that's a theoretical thing. Practically, that's what have to come first with a decision. Yeah, I'm ready to do that. And after that, you're right. But then in that decision, there is a detail of Nehi of Chagat. Nehi of Chagat asks the same question 2 times. Really? Like tomorrow. Yeah? Like, meaning a person could be in just Chagat and say, you know what? Yeah, I'll get married, but it doesn't mean like now. Right? Nehi of Chagat answers that urgency, like it's happening now. Like now you're getting married, right? Like the girl that you like is there and you really just gonna get married to her. And then the Nehi part, it's not going to go through the decision. The Nehi department, we could call it the actualization department. That's like, okay, we finding a girl. Okay, now which suit I'm going to choose to go out with that girl or to go out with that guy. Okay, or like, calling, what do you call it? Shadchanim. Looking through the resumes. Reaching out to my friends. Maybe they know this guy, maybe they know that girl. Okay, so all these steps are nehi, thinking about how to actualize. Anything that has to do with the decision, chagat, in general, yes. Nehi of chagat right now, or maybe a little bit later, because sometimes what could happen, a person could say, yeah, in general, I'm ready to get married, but not like literally right now. Talk to me after Pesach. Okay? You see the difference? So it's like a decision is yes, but is it really happening now? Is there an urgency of right now? The same thing is with the building. You want to have a house? Yeah, for sure I'm going to have a house. But is it happening now? Like, for example, now with my kitchen, right? I decided that I want to make a new kitchen. That's it, right? It's very urgent. It's already past the nehi of my chagat. There's an urgency because right before Pesach, right? I literally have 11 days, 12 days. And today we're actually going with my husband to Home Depot to choose kitchen cabinets. So that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's like, it's a nehi of the chagat and it's going into malchus. Yeah, like it's already, this is it. Like it's action. I'm taking action.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking anymore. I'm literally going to drive.
But Mila, I was thinking about this paragraph and how you can say, it's taking our thought process, which is usually so quick, and breaking it down into like microseconds. And I was thinking, like, what's the point of that? Like, why would we need to know about that? But psychologically, it's very profound because if you understand how this applies, like in our minds, you can see where do I get stuck?
Exactly.
Do I get stuck at the decision-making process? Do I get stuck, at the chagat? Or do I get stuck at the nihi of like, yeah, I want it, but I never really start to think about how to actually make it happen. And, shidduchim can be a good example of that, but I think all of us in our lives.
Amazing example. Yeah, it's an amazing example. It's so practical,
Right.
because a lot of times what people do is like when they have fears about certain things, they will go out and all of a sudden like, oh, no. And that's it. For another 5 years, they stop the whole shidduch process. And what happened? Didn't you make the decision? And therefore he says, Tokef Hadas. The more we are connected to the idea of it, the Tokef Hadas, all of a sudden he pulls out Das from his pocket. We're like, wait a second, we forgot about Das. Das was intellect, In this chapter, he doesn't even, in the beginning, he doesn't even says a word of Das. He even jumps not to Chabad, he says Kachab, right? Remember? The Kachab. Like as if Das doesn't exist. But no, Das exists in such a profound way that we don't even need to mention about it. It's like air. Like, do we need to talk about air? If there'll be no air, there will be nothing. So that's what Das becomes. Das becomes this breathing reality of emes that really connects us to truth, right? It's in Hayom Yom was recently about, the Kava emes, and that's what Das is. Das is like literally making, what's Tokef Hadas? Tokef Hadas brings us to us original oneg. Why are we doing it to begin with? When we feel stuck on these lower levels before acting out, right? Because there's so many details, especially when you want to get married. There's like this shidduchim, shatchanim, and they ask you this stupid questions 100 times, and those, resumes that you need to fill out, the questionnaires that they need to fill out. And they're asking you, right now, forget about it. Like, I'm surprised like people get married after all these resumes. They have to fill out so many questions. It kills your motivation. What do you think gonna happen? Your dad's constantly gonna ask you a question, bring you all the way to your pleasure point, which is like you're already envisioning yourself with a bunch of family or with a nice girl or with a nice guy and blah, blah, and bring constantly so you could actually do all the practical steps. For example, back to my kitchen, right? It's not fun because you need to take down all your old kitchen cabinets. What do you think that's going to force me to sort out all my garbage that I would usually sell for chametz? Okay. It's like details, right? You're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And you have to make additional decisions. What am I keeping and what am I throwing away? Because usually I would just close it up nicely and write sold for chametz and never open up till another Pesach. Okay. So now we need to take it out and I need to deal with this guy who is going to make it all nice and beautiful and choose the paint. It's a pain in the neck. But what do you think going to motivate a person who is dealing with a project is the end result, that I don't have to cover my kitchen anymore. Just for this year, right? Amazing. No covering the kitchen because I'm going to have a new kitchen for Pesach. So that pleasure of really having a normal kitchen for Pesach, even for 1 year, this pleasure overshadows the pain of going through all this, right?
Kitchen takes more than 2 weeks. You have to really look at the timeline. It takes a lot more than that. You don't want to go bare.
My kitchen is very small. Don't worry. I don't have a house, so it's still on a smaller scale.
Mila?
Next year you have to build a Pesach kitchen.
I know, B'ezrat Hashem, next year I'm planning being in Jerusalem.
Exactly. Mila, I think that we should.
I just want.
We should move on.
Nuria, I knew about to say something, but I want to make a comment about what you said before that was so beautiful, Nuria. Will you forget what you wanted to say now?
No, I just say we need to move on.
Yeah, we do need to move on. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But what you said before about why do we need to pinpoint, like break it down and pinpoint, and it reminded me about something really interesting. And that's Mila may remember, you recently did Feuerstein, but Feuerstein takes the processes of how people, children or adults or anybody functions and breaks it down. Like there's a certain amount, I don't remember the numbers, of input, there's a certain amount of points of processing and a certain amount of points of output. And there's a total of I don't know how many. And when you understand using his instruments, you can pinpoint where a child gets stuck that you're working with and that's stuck somewhere. And you can literally mamish isolate where the issues are.
Right.
So that's what you reminded me about.
Okay, great.
And there's a whole bunch. There's like 30, 40, 50. I don't even know how many there are. Okay, go ahead.
He has, I think, 28 instruments.
There were like, the points, like what I remember 23 about something, but I don't know if it's an accurate number for anything. Okay, go ahead.
So,
All right, I
Nuria,
think we need to move on. Sorry, Nacham. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just based on what you just said about how it's useful to break it down. Do you think that, I'm thinking of myself to go back to a decision that we made and now after looking back to analyze it and to understand the process with all the detail, is that useful? Because as you said, while we're making decisions, we don't think of all these details.
If you don't get stuck, why would you want to go there? Unless you want to just for the sake of learning.
Yeah, for the sake of learning and understanding. Yeah,
Why
no,
not?
I think sometimes we get stuck and then we get unstuck.
Yeah.
But the learning would be for the purpose of making future decisions go more smoothly.
Yeah, and
I don't see that as part of this.
We should not forget about the fun aspect. Just keep in mind, when you're going to be analyzing any good decision that really lasted for years, there are some decisions we make and we're like, how did that add to my life? Zero. But there are some decisions that like getting married or something like that, right? You just go back there and see the whole decision process. There was always an element of oneg there. Good decisions always have oneg.
So the oneg is would you say it's the irrational part of it?
Oneg is fun.
Oh,
It's an aspect of fun.
oneg is
Yeah,
good,
there is
right?
all of
Oneg-
a sudden you're excited. You know, nobody gets
yeah,
married
okay.
with a bullet by the head. And
All
then
right.
years later gonna say, oh, that was such an amazing decision. No. I'm talking about usually like people like would go back and think like, how in the world I did that? I did that decision. And when you travel in your thoughts and in your memories, you had a tremendous amount of energy doing this. There was
Mhm.
a tremendous amount of excitement around it. So all that were building blocks to kind of move you towards making that decision. Because you were connected with your oneg, it was very, there was das there, very much. Like I remember me getting married, for example, right? Or like me making a decision to do home birth, or let's say me, not wanting to vaccinate my kids, or me, for example, opening the school, right? Like major decisions in my life. I travel back to those memories when I have difficulties, let's say, here and there, and all of a sudden, like, boom, like you really see that oneg again, that energy, that you wanting to do the decision, like really being passionate about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, although, like, what was it? There was nothing major. But that shows that good decisions have indicators. It doesn't just happen. Just walking down the street, oh, I made a decision. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll notice, and this is a good exercise, Nechama. Yeah, going back to good decisions that you made in life and see what were the components of the decision. What was happening around it that made you to make decision and also stick to it. Choose the decisions that stick to it. I'm gonna reveal my little story here. With my marriage. Yeah, I'm the first one to marry into an Ashkenazi, okay, in my family. That was like a big thing. I'm coming from a very well-established Bukharian family, with yichus and all that stuff. And when I became Chabad, my mom was tolerating it. But when I chose, because there was a lot of Bukharians, good families became Chabad, so she was like, okay, fine. She's drifting off, but at least, one day she'll marry into a good Bukharian family. And when I chose an Ashkenazi, that was it. That was like the end of her patience. So one of the things that she said, when my husband came to her to discuss, the marriage, is that he came with his mashpim and all that stuff. She's like, well, you need to know Mila, she said. And they were like, yeah, what about her? She's like, well, I changed a lot of jobs throughout my, since I was 16, 15. I did, selling ice cream here, working in the roofing company there, very diverse jobs. I mean, one day I could write you a list. I probably changed like 50 professions. I was working, in a beauty school, doing makeup and doing hair. And then I moved to Chabad. And again, was working as a secretary in a roofing company. It was like very, very diverse. So my mother felt like saying to my future husband, that, now she's Chabad, but, you never know, what she's going to be next. She said, yeah, a solid Chabad boy, and maybe you should reconsider this decision, that you want to marry my daughter. You just need to know her a little bit. Okay. And it was really cute because, her attempt to really keep me within, the Bukharian community. And so why am I bringing this point? And, and then she said the same thing when I decided to open a school. And interestingly, but these are the two things that I stuck for years. I'm married to my husband for 22 years, Baruch Hashem, and I ran the school for 15 years. So for her, it's a big wonder, it's a pella. It's like, how come, Mila all of a sudden makes this decisions and she sticks to them? So this is this is the key element. You know what I'm talking about? Like there are some things that although we might be very airy, moving from one things to the next, changing jobs, changing profession, but some things do touch us on a little bit deeper level. And we just need to be a little bit conscious. And this is what Shariachot is about, is like, what is it? What is it? There are some decisions are shallow decisions, and some decisions are very deep decisions. Okay, like, oh, what is it that really keeping me here or keeping me doing this? For example, I think we all have some kind of decisions, for example, sticking to the second chapter and doing it with us, right? Go back to that decision. What was there? You could have just said, okay, I'm sorry, this is too much. First chapter, bye-bye. And that was it, right? So what was it? Betty's laughing. Okay, what was that? Okay, so you will find out that there was an element of oneg there. It may not necessarily be so conscious, but sometimes oneg is just there very fast. Okay, so let's go into text because it's almost 11 o'clock. And now what Rabbi Hillel is going to do is going to break down the Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. Now, we spoke generally, we mainly, the first paragraph of the second chapter, spoke about mainly the Yisroel Sabba level, right? We spoke about Chagat of Chachma and Nehi of Chachma. Okay. And we're gonna see the difference between this and other parts of the brain. Any questions up until now?
Mila, we're not taking questions. We really
we're not taking questions.
Well, those were all the questions that we could.
Okay.
So worried about it, but
No problem. Okay. Paragraph number 2. Do we have recording on, Maria?
yeah. For all the
Okay.
time.
Amazing. Okay, so here we go. We have this. You have access to this, and we're gonna be working with this document. Let me just do this red point here. Okay, so Shari Yichud of the Middle Rebbe, Reveal Paracha Commentary, Chapter 2, Paragraph 2. Ve'im hanal Yuvan Hefresh ben Chachma Bina Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. And with the above, we will understand the difference between Chachma and Bina and Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. Yeah, right now it's gibberish. So B'ezrat Hashem, we're gonna work this out. Ki Chachma and Bina or Bechinas Gimel Rishon Shebahem, right? Because Chachma and Bina are the aspects of 3 upper spheres, right? Which is Gimel Rishayos, which is 3 heads or 3 first spheres within them. Shehu, which is what? Shehu Askalat Etzem Ha'inyan Bilvad, which is the conceptualizations of the essence of the matter alone. That's it. This is just the intellectual concept. Bilti Yistaef Mimenu Shum Inyan Nivdal Klal, from which nothing separate branches out at all. Okay? Just remember this. What does this mean? Nothing separate branches out at all. Meaning we are talking about this matter and this matter only. We are still preoccupied with this thing. There is absolutely no application into anything, no strings attached. We are learning a concept, and this is the geder, the boundaries of that concept is only that concept. Okay, there's nothing else. There's nothing else exists besides that concept in our head at the moment. Neither in emotions nor in actions. Now, when we're talking about emotions here, we don't mean emotions as anger, frustration, overwhelm, or anything like that. We're talking about midas, decisions. When we use the word midas, this is just, we're talking about decisions. There's no decisions yet and no practical applications, no action. Va'agam shebehelem yeshno behem koach ha'asiyah v'amidot. Right? Although in a concealed manner, the power of action and emotions exist within them. Okay? Now, potentially it's existed because, you see, decision about the matter and the action about the matter, it's not separate from the essence of the matter. It's just hidden there. Okay? Is that clear? This is a very important thing because the decisions and the acting out, it's about the concept. So the concept is constantly attached to the decision process and to the actualizations process. But when we are just dealing with Chochmah and Bina, we don't see them yet. It's not revealed. That's why he says, Behelem yeshno behem. In a concealed manner, the power of action and emotions exist within them. And how do we know that? He brings a proof. Varaya de ksasher yirtze litchakem eich lahoirois velasois beinyan shehiskil. And the proof is that when one wants to contemplate how to instruct and act upon the matter, what he can conceptualize, what he does, what do you think he does? He is forced to review his actual conceptualizations and reasoning that he had conceived and grasped in the seichel. Okay? This is a very, very key component. What does that Rav does? Remember that Rav that had only Nehi of the Chagat, actually didn't have the Nehi of the Chagat. And he was presented with halachic question, although in a concept he knew about it, or he thought he knew about it. And then he is like presented with a question, what do you think the guy is going to do? When he is not yet, doesn't have Tokef Hadas to bring out the ruling, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to tell that lady that brought that chicken, said, okay, wait a second. Let me go back to my learning. He's going to open a bunch of books. Why is he opening a bunch of books? He learned it in yeshiva. And in order to pass to the Yonus classes, he did that already. And before he got his smicha, he did that already. Why would he? Is anything new there? No. But he needs to go back into the Iyun process, okay, in order to deliver psak din. In our words, he needs to go deeper, meaning he needs to go up in order to draw down a psak din. Okay, and that process called Iyun, and we know that, right? He is forced to review his actual conceptualizations and reasoning so he can derive a halachic ruling. So that's why he's giving us a proof that in the Chochmah and Bina, the Midas and the Maaseh is there. It's just not revealed. It's concealed. And that's why he has to go back to the Iyun in order to draw down these things, right? And that's, for example, that's what Neria just said. If you don't know the answers to these questions, go back to the text, right? Why? Because they're there. The text that carries out the concept has all the answers. And if we have difficulty applying the Rebbe's Sicha, what do we need to do? Go back to the text. Okay, this is the, just what it is. Mekol mokom eino begilui klal. But nevertheless, they are not in the state of revelation, right? How do we know that? For example, we're learning a mimer and we really would like to apply it and we're having difficulty in application. If we're going to go back to the mimer, we're not going to see the answers there. It's not going to say, okay, when you faced with this and this challenge, you should act this and this way. No, it doesn't say it. So how can we say that the answers are there, right? If we're going to practice it correctly, then the essence will come out, meaning the answers are there, but it's not begili. Okay. Okay. Aval. But Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna, this is the Rashi Tevis for this. Hu ka'asher mitchakem bilvad b'muskil b'sichlei. But Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna is when one contemplates the concept that he has conceptualized in his mind, meaning it is still in the mind realm. It's in his thinking brain, we call it, right? Ach lehoreis boy, but lehoreis boy kmo beitza shenolda hanal, as how to instruct regarding it, such as the case of the egg that was laid on Yom Tov mentioned above, kishekvar hiskil shuhu nolet, once he has already conceptualized that it is in the category of nolat, a new entity on Yom Tov, yitchakem eich tzarich liyos b'hoira asur muter. He contemplates how the halachic ruling should be regarding it, whether it is forbidden or permitted. Okay? V'kein b'maaseh habinyan. And similarly, regarding the act of construction, kishemaskil ichuto b'shleimus, okay, once he has conceptualized its quality completely, we're talking about quality of construction of the building, the actual building, okay, he will need to contemplate, meaning he has to contemplate twice in a way. Okay, once theoretically and once practically. He will need to contemplate how to bring the matter into actualizations and action. And what do you think is going to be asked him when he's going to do that? When he would have to second time to contemplate and to bring the matter into actualizations and actions, he's going to ask himself a question: do I really need it? Okay, and that's where the decision is going to come from. And this aspect is called the emotional attributes of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, which is Chagat. Okay, V'netzach Hod Yisod, which is Nehi of Chachma. Now, U'b'Chagat Gufa yesh b'chinas Nehi now. And as we discussed, right, and even within the Chagat itself, there's also an aspect of Nehi, as it was explained above. So up until now, he's pretty much summarizing the paragraph 1 before moving forward to explain us the difference between Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. But the difference between Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna, between Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna, is that shebechinas Yisroel Sabba and bechinas midis, okay, hamidgalim be'etzem hachachma. The aspect of Yisroel Sabba is the aspect of midis, right, that are revealed within the essence of Chachma. Kodem shebeyaim litlabesh be'bchinas hasaga Bina. And this is the key word here. This happens before they come to being clothed within the aspect of the intellectual comprehension of Bina. Okay, meaning we're talking about the Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. Okay, well, the difference between Yisroel Sabba to Tevuna is that in Chachma, right, we said that we have that vision of that concept. Okay, then we're going into that Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna, into making a decision. Are we going to be actualizing this vision, or we're just going to keep it as a vision? Okay, when the Psak Din is going to be within our consciousness, yes, I'm going for it, then my Bina is going to be thinking of all its details. Bina is not going to be entertaining this idea if the midas of Chachma are not going to draw the decision. It's not happening, right? Why would you want to be thinking what kitchen cabinets you want, what colors you want, how wide you want them, if you didn't make a decision that you want them? Okay, so the same thing is here. Now, Yisroel Sabba is in between Chachma and Bina. Right? It's a decision factor. Are we giving it to that department for an investigation? Are we doing it? Like feasibility studies of Bina? All the details and blah, blah, blah. If there was no decision on the Chachma level, that this concept, are we entertaining it? or we're just throwing into the back of our mind? Okay, let's do it again. Shebechinas Yisroel Sabba and Bechinas Midas Hamidgalim Be'etzem HaChachma. The aspect of Yisroel Sabba are the aspects of Midas that are revealed within the essence of Chachma. Kodem Shebayim Leislabesh Bebechinas Hasaga de Bina. Before they come to be enclosed within the aspect of the intellectual comprehension of Bina. Okay? Kamuvuar Lemala, right? As explained above, Be'inyan Shtik Rav. Okay, regarding the matter that the Rav remained silent. Why did he remain silent? Remember the Rav? We were learning about it in chapter 1. When they came to Rav and they asked him about this egg that was born on Yom Tov. He had no problem with Psak Din. The Psak Din Chagat of Chachma, he had no problem. He had clarity about it. Okay. Now, the Rabbi Bar Nechemia was different. Rabbi Bar Nechemia took the Rav's Psak Din as the truth and went into all the details, into comparison analysis, we call it, right? What was the difference between the calf that was born on Yom Tov and the egg that was born on Yom Tov, right? Shtik Rav, the Rav was quiet. He didn't give the reasoning behind it, but he had clarity that what was the case. Okay, and Rabbi Bar Nechemia, who was a student of the Rav, was able to comprehend and do all the comparative analysis between the two situations and figure out why in this case the Psak Din in this way and in other case Psak Din is that way. Okay, Ubechinas Tevuna. So now we're going to go into Tevuna. What is a Tevuna then? Those are the emotions. These are the midas of Bina. Ubechinas Tevuna and Bechinas midas, right? That they are midas. Anoldi mehasaga de Bina, that are born from the intellectual comprehension of Bina. Right? After going through all the details, remember from chapter 1, what was the difference between Chachma and Bina? Chachma answers the question, what? Right? And the Bina understands why. Okay, so Bina, after giving all the answers why, that supports the Psak Din of Chachma. You have the Chagat of Chachma, to be more precise. Okay? Of the Chagat of Chachma. Now the Bina goes into the whys. Why I need it, why this person, why this kitchen, why not something else, and blah, 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 right? And goes back and forth into this whole chant of ideas until it's going to make its decision. Now, Bina has to paskin. Is she going to move forward with that or not? Maybe there's not enough money. Maybe there's not enough resources. Maybe the Home Depot is going to be closed. Are we going to leave it for later? Yeah, so all these processes are going to be happening in Bina. And what's going to happen then? That's Hasaga of the Bina, right? That the midas are going to be born now. The decisions, again, midas are not just emotions, but these are just decisions that are going to be born from the Hasaga of the Bina. And what's going to happen? Achina yesh oide fresh, right? So that's, in addition to that difference, there's also going to be another difference between Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. Yisroel Sabba and Eina Koach Chadash. Now, when we're talking about Yisroel Sabba, okay, it's not a new power. We're going to talk about it, why it's not new power. Okay, Rak HaMides Shahayu Klulim Be'etzem HaSkala. Right? So there were just the midas that were included in the Haskala in a hidden manner. They're just coming into a revelation. Okay? In the realm of Chachma, usually it's Helen Vigili, right? We're going to learn about it later on in chapter 3, if we survive. Okay? So they're going to be in the realm of revelations, meaning something was hidden and it only gets revealed. In the world of Bria, which is the world of Bina, we already see chidush, right? It's a new creation. Yeah, it's already something new being emerged and created. And now with Bina, it's something interesting. With Bina, the actual physicality changes. Okay, the actual physicality of the brain changes after the levels of Bina emerge. Okay, and specifically the lower levels of Bina, which is the midas of Bina. What happens? Right? Okay. Boli de Gilui. Now in Chachma, they just come into revelations. His galusam hu be'etzem aseichel. Right? And yet the revelation is still within the essence of the intellect. Okay. Adayin, lamala me'asaga, which is above the realm of intellectual grasp. But the Tevuna is different. Tevuna hu be'etzem koach chadash. Tevuna, in its essence, is a new power. Shehu masha kli hamoach hagashmi, which is that the physical brain, the physicality of the brain, kolet ba'atzmai hahasaga v'askala, right, absorbs internally into itself the comprehension and conceptualization, right? So over here, it's not just a concept. It's not just in the realm of a light in the brain, okay? It actually gets absorbed into the actual physicality of the brain, meaning you're literally going to have a fold in your brain after conceptualizing that particular concept. Okay, Bebchina is pneumius, right? To the extent that the physical brain, Bebchina is pneumius, right? In the aspect of pneumius, ad shekli hamoach hagashmi yavdi la'askala v'asaga ruchnis. Right, to the extent that the physical brain defines the spiritual conceptualizations and comprehension. What does this mean, defines? It literally becomes part of the brain. Part of the brain structure. Like, let's say if we, right now with all the technology, we're going to go to Dr. Joe Dispenza, okay, workshop. And before Shara Yichud exposure to after Shara Yichud exposure, and the scans are going to show, whoa, you didn't have this fold, and now you do have that fold, right? What does it tell you? It tells you that it's not just a software, it's a hardware download, meaning it's literally going to change the circuitry of your brain. Okay, and we see that whenever we learn a new skill, it's no longer processed by the brain. It becomes automatized to the extent that if you're woken up in the middle of the night, it's part of you. It's literally part of your physicality of your brain. You'll have the reference and you will never forget it in your life. Right? And this is the essential concept of Tevuna itself. And because of this download, a hardware download that happens in the brain, the emotional attributes, right? The decisions of the Bina emerge. Okay, what happens? For when one fully absorbs the essence of the intellectual comprehension, right? When that happens, what do you think a person is capable of doing? Okay, let me ask you. What Bina does, Bina, we gave a mashal of a river, right? What happens with a river when it takes the Ma'ayan and what it does? It brings it to faraway places. It makes sure that the waters of the Ma'ayan is going to get kilometers, miles and miles away from the Ma'ayan. Okay? And the only way why would Bina be able to do that is because it gets the download into the very circuitry of the brain, the very physicality of the brain. So because that happens, it could actually make connections, because that's how brain works. Brain is the main organ of the body. Okay, what it does is that it connects, right? Meaning, if I understand one thing, but I understand it so well that it actually gets welded in my brain, okay? Now, that concept is going to be accessible to the rest parts of my brain. So now, I'm not just learning. I'm also cooking, I'm walking, I'm breathing, and the brain controls everything, all operations of the body. So when something is on a hard wire download, connects to the rest of the functions of the brain. And therefore, these concepts that are being downloaded on such a level that it affects the physicality of the brain has the ability to affect all the areas of my life, because everything is in the brain. There's absolutely nothing that a person does or doesn't do if it's not directly connected to his brain. We may not feel it, but if chas v'shalom, a person who gets, brain damages, they feel it very well. That simple things like sneezing or like wiping the nose or, basic things that we don't even think about it, actually controlled by the brain. And this is therefore what a person is able to do. As yachol lahaver bekama inyanim nivdali mimena. So he then can apply in many separate matters. What kind of separate matters? A person sits down and learns a mimer in the Tevuna level to such an extent that he knows how to cook better. And you might think to yourself, like, well, that's taking it very far. What Chassidus has to do with cooking? Well, very much. Because there are certain concepts, he understood it in such a way that he was able to apply it in matters that are completely separate, or not completely separate, seemingly separate. But because the circuitry in the brain is all inclusive and all connected, the messages go in a matter of split seconds. And he's able to look at areas that are completely separate from that concept, but because it's downloaded and a hardwire, it's completely transformed his entire thinking process. Okay? Such as extending it in a thought or using it to instruct in a separate matter. Okay, for example, such as performing multiple actions, okay, and taking it, applying it to totally different things. However, when one does not fully absorb it within the vessels of the brain, as then the intellectual grasp and conceptualizations do not yet become fully internalized. Therefore, he is not yet capable to bring them into a separate matter. Okay? Yeah, this is paragraph 2 continued on a separate page. Right? At first glance, this is not understood. Right? For even Bina, just the Bina itself, without the Tevuna, is the grasp of reasoning in letters. Right? We said the Bina is letters. To the extent that it comes into the state of hisyashvus. And hisyashvus, please single out, underline this word, hisyashvus. It's a state of settling within the faculties of the brain. Right? And therefore the Bina is called the aspect of yesh. Right? Well, what do you think? What question is he asking? He says, oh, Tevuna is koach chadash. Well, Bina is also yesh. Why are you saying the Tevuna, like you're singling out Tevuna as being something, wow, something novel? Bina is also yesh. So how does he explain that? We know that it's lower than the aspect of the nekuda, the point of chachma. Okay, she'ein ba'oisi adayin, and in the point there are no letters yet. Ve'in came gama bina hu b'bchinas pnimius. And if so, the bina is also comes into internalized state. Why are you saying that it's only Tevuna? He says, however, the essence of the matter in brief, okay, that there's a difference between the aspect when things get just settled in our brain versus something which gets absorbed in our brain. Or another word for that, kalita, is actually engraved in our brain. Okay? And what are the difference? V'yuven al derech dogma. Right? And he brings, we'll understand this in the way of an example. And famous Shnei Anashim, right? There are two men, two people. Sheshamim et hasechel umasigim ot hatev. So, right? There are two people who hear the intellectual concept and grasp it well. What happens to them? Right? They, to the extent that it settles within the faculty of the brain, right? Meaning, Hisyashvus is the term for Yisroel Sabba, okay? And Klita is the term for Tevuna. So now, what happens? Now, both of them have it in the way of Hisyashvus. Mikol Makom, nevertheless, nevertheless, it is possible that one will remember it for a very long time. It's like you ask him like 20 years later, what was the three levels of seichel? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Kachab, Chagat, Nehi. Oh, that's very nice. I remember we were learning it, in our Shar Yichud class. Very nice. Very nice. Now, what happened? So he's able to remember it Zman Rav. And the second one will forget it. Like, yeah, we were learning something about the decision making, but I'm not sure what. It was a long time ago. But at that time, he knew it. Why this has happened? And this is because the intellect was not deeply absorbed within the faculty of his brain. Therefore, even though it settled in his brain, it was a temporary. Why? Because it was in the level of or, in a level of light. And level of light, it comes, it makes sense, and then when we're thinking about other things, drifts off. That's it. It settles, meaning it makes sense. It's also a level. Let's not undermine it. It's a level where we don't have to struggle with making sense. It makes perfect sense. Meaning, it settles with my brain circuitry, right? It resonates with me. It makes sense to me. Oh, amazing. But you know what? If it's not deeply engraved, it just vanishes. Now, the hisyashvus has to come into klita for it to remain there permanently. It's literally permanently changes certain things. You know what? It's like a dance. There are some dances that we forget. But there are some dances. I remember this dance, Baruch HaGever. Don't ask me why. Okay, I was part of Bnei Akiva when I was 12, 13, 14. And they taught us this dance, Baruch HaGever, da-da-da-da. I don't know what it is. Ask me now. I know how to dance this. I know all the movements. I don't even know how I know it. It's been a while since I was dancing, okay? Rikudei Am. But there are certain movements that will just remain. You just hear Baruch HaGever and you know how to dance it. Okay, that's on the level of Tevuna. And I'm sure you have a bunch of things on the level of Tevuna where you haven't done it for a very, very long time and it just pops right out. Okay? However, there are some things that you knew how to do it, but now you'll be like, scratching your head is like, I'm not sure how to do it. It was a long time ago. Masha'enkein ha'alef, margish ha'sechel be'oimek kli moichai. The first one is not like that. He feels the intellect deeply within his brain. Bezeu nikra klita. And this, what is called absorption or engravement. And therefore, he will remember it well. Okay, and that's, by the way, when they say that it's important to learn things by heart, right? We don't do that in our days anymore, or at least not as often as in olden days. But remembering things by heart, it's essential for that reason, because it actually changes the circuitry of the brain. Okay, v'sibas hakli tahu ka'asher yeshlo bitul b'kli moichai. Amazing. And why? The reasons for absorptions, the reasons for klita is when one has humility within the faculty of his brain. Wow. Interesting. And that triggers us into what? Remember when we're talking about? We're talking about omek, remember? We use the same expressions when there's a bitul. Omek is that when I'm, able to remove how I understand things. Remember when he gave a mashal between the Talmud and the Rebbe, is when I'm leaving how my understanding is, and I'm ready to absorb, ready to receive, from the teacher. That's what will ensure that it will be deep enough. It will come into the level of klita. However, if I'm full with how I understand things, because I already studied it 56 times, okay? And therefore I already have my notion of what it is. It will hinder the way my absorption process will be. As yichlot heitev ora seichel ruchni, and then he will fully absorb the light of the spiritual intellect. Masha'enkin kshekli moicho gas. And it's not like that when his brain is coarse. Hainu shu b'bchinas yesh, when he is in the aspect of yesh, k'moriyat ish chacham be'inav, as in a man who is wise in his own eyes. Okay? Lo yiklat or seichel ruchani b'moicha klal. Then the light of the spiritual intellect will not be absorbed in his brain at all. Although it may temporarily settle there. And this is the difference between Bina and Tevuna. Okay, so now we went very much b'derech prat. Okay, very much b'derech prat. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, my brain is swelling. I need 3 months to process it. Okay, I see we have some questions here. 8. Oh my gosh. Okay. No, what was it? Some of it probably not applicable anymore. It says, can you show the text where you are? Oh, you want me? Okay. There is a red dot. Okay, thank you. In the book. Okay, page. Okay, so was the Hebrew English text posted? Yes, it was.
They're all
Okay,
technical
oh, okay, so these are the technical questions that as I was reading and translating, but they were perfectly answered.
Just by the way, some of you, if you downloaded this Hebrew English text on Friday, some of it was missing because it was for technical reasons, let's say.
Okay, any questions? How does that resonate with you? Is it in the level of his Yashwas?
I'm just wondering, Mila, if because the Hebrew English is quite choppy, I'm just wondering if perhaps it would help people if I just read through the English.
Sure, I think that would be amazing. Yeah.
Would that be something that people would welcome, or it's not necessary? I'm asking a question, so I need a response.
Yeah, if Naria would read it in English, but just as a one, without going to Hebrew English, just as a one cohesive text.
Yeah.
Unmute and
Yeah.
say that.
It would be good. Yes, it's good.
Okay,
Good
so
to-
so I'm going to share it. This is just the English text as it is, just so that we see the flow. Because it seems to me that the details are quite complex, but he doesn't say that much in this paragraph. He says a lot, but there are a few main ideas. So the first section, he's just, as Mila said, he's really recapping what we learned in paragraph 1. So, and with the above, we'll understand the difference between Chochmah and Bina and Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. Chochmah and Bina are the aspects of the 3 upper sphirot, Gimel Reshin, the 3 heads within them, which is the conceptualization of the essence of the matter alone, from which nothing separate branches out at all, neither in emotions nor in action. That we learned about before, the Gimel Reshin. And then he adds a point that he didn't say in paragraph 1. Even though in a concealed matter, the power of action and emotions exists within them, meaning the Gimel Reshin, and the proof is that when one wants to contemplate how to instruct and act upon the matter that he conceptualized, he's forced to review his actual conceptualization and reasoning that he conceived and grasped, etc. However, nevertheless, it's not at all in a state of revelation. The language here is a little bit difficult just with the English, but if you look, conceptualization is always Chochmah and reasoning is Bina, conceived is Chochmah and grasped is Bina. So we're talking about going back into the Chochmah and Bina and really just going back into the Eon process, because enclosed within them is the Chagat and the Nehi, but in a hidden way. Okay. But Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna is when one contemplates the concept that is conceptualized in his mind as to how to instruct regarding it, such as the case of the egg that was laid on Yom Tov mentioned above. Once he has already conceptualized that it's in the category of nolad, which means a new entity on Yom Tov, he contemplates how the halachic ruling should be regarding it, whether it is forbidden or permitted. So that's going to be in the realm of Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. And similarly, regarding the act of construction, once he has conceptualized its quality completely, he'll need to contemplate how to bring the matter into actualization and action. And this aspect is called the emotional attributes of Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Chagat, and Netzach Hod, Yesod, Nehi of Chochmah. And even within Chagat itself, there's also an aspect of Nehi as explained above. So up until there was really just a summary of paragraph 1. Now, however, the difference between Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna is that the aspect of Yisroel Sabba is the aspect of Middos that are revealed within the aspect of Chochmah before they come to be enclosed within the aspect of the intellectual comprehension of Bina, as explained above regarding the matter of Rav remained silent. And the aspect of Tevuna is the emotions that are born from the intellectual comprehension of Bina. So here he's just telling us that Yisroel Sabba are the emotions of Chochmah, and Tevuna are the emotions of Bina, the Middos. Yisroel Sabba are the Middos of Chochmah, and Tevuna are the Middos of Bina. If you just get that for now, like where they belong, that's the beginning of what we need to understand. But we need to know, however, there's yet another difference between Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna. The aspect of Yisroel Sabba is not a new power, but rather the middos that were included in the essence of the conceptualization in a concealed manner that have now come into revelation. Yet their revelation is still within the essence of intellect and remains above the realm of intellectual grasp. However, the aspect of Tevuna is an entirely new power, which is that the physical brain absorbs internally into itself the comprehension and conceptualization to the extent that the physical brain defines the spiritual conceptualization and comprehension, and this is the essential concept of Tevuna itself. It's really hard, the language is a little bit hard, but what he's saying here, to make it just the literal thing that he's saying Yisroel Sabba, and he's going to repeat it now. You know what, let him repeat it, because he now goes on and says the same thing, but in better language, some way that we can understand it. And due to this, the emotional attributes of Bina emerge. When one fully absorbs the essence of the intellectual comprehension, you can then apply it to many separate matters, such as expanding it in thought or using it to instruct regarding a separate matter, such as performing multiple actions. However, when one does not fully absorb it within the vessel of the brain, then the intellectual grasp and conceptualization do not yet become fully internalized. Therefore, he's not able to bring them into a separate matter. So with the Chokhmah, okay, at first glance, this is not understood. For even Bina is the grasp of reasoning in letters to the extent that it comes into a state of settling, hityashvut, within the faculties of the brain. And therefore, Bina is called the aspect of yesh, something which is lower than the aspect of the point of Chokhmah, which does not yet contain letters at all. And if so, then Bina also comes into an internalized state. However, the essence of the matter in brief is that there's a difference between the aspect of hityashvut, settling, and the aspect of absorption, klita. And this is basically what he's been saying all along, where I didn't want to stop, even though it's not so clear, because now he explains it with two words. In Chokhmah, the Yisroel Sabba is not something that's new, because it's just in a way of hityashvut. And when it comes down into Bina, into Tevuna, the midos of Bina, it becomes absorbed in a way that the actual physical brain changes. And that's the main difference that we need to understand between them. And if you look back, even in chapter 1, we saw this difference between Chokhmah and Bina, that when you really get into the details, it's something that's with the Eon, you really get to know it. Okay, so continue. And this can be understood by way of an example of two people who hear an intellectual concept and grasp it well to the extent that it settles within the faculties of their brains. Nevertheless, it's possible that one person will remember it well for a long time, while the other will forget it. And this is because the intellect was not deeply absorbed within the faculty of the brain. Therefore, even though it settled in his brain, it was only temporary. Whereas the first person who felt the intellect deeply within his brain, this is what's called absorption. And therefore, he will remember it well. The reason for absorption is when one has humility, bitul, within the faculties of his brain, then he will fully absorb the light of the spiritual intellect. Whereas that was the nun, the bitul of the nun and the bitul of the iyun. Whereas if his brain faculty is coarse, meaning that he's in the aspect of a yesh, something, meaning he has arrogance, he says, I'm a man who is wise in his own eyes, and you can't learn anything if you think you know everything, then the light of the spiritual intellect will not be absorbed in his brain at all, even though it may temporarily settle there. And this is the difference between Bina and Tevuna. Mila, shouldn't it say this is the difference between Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna?
No, not really, because in Yisroel Sabba, he first explained Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna, and now he's explaining the Bina and Tevuna. Remember, he asked in the beginning a question, well, okay, Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna, the difference was very clear. Yisroel Sabba was just a decision fact of Chachma. Okay, and thinking about the Maisa. He said it's not Koach Chadash. Remember, he said it's not a new power. So he says, well, so what's the difference then between Bina and Tevuna? Because Bina is Yesh, okay, she already has letters, she already has something concrete. Like, what's the difference between Bina and Yisroel Sabba? Okay.
Bina and Tevuna.
I'm sorry, Bina and Tevuna. Okay, so it says Bina and Tevuna because Bina, although yes, it's already separating it from the essence of the concept, right? It's already making it more concrete, more relatable. Okay, but still, it's not fully absorbed by the brain yet.
Until it goes into
Until
Tevuna,
it goes into Tevuna, yes.
into the midos of Bina.
Exactly. And it's interestingly, but it resonates with me, with the Rebbe now, a little bit differently when the Rebbe says, Hamaisa wa'ikar. The Maisa is the Ikar. What does this mean, Hamaisa wa'ikar? Yeah, you could be thinking theoretically, but when you want to bring it down into practicality, that will force your brain to really own a concept, not just being theoretical.
Right.
And I'm sure you're all going to ask a question that Naria asked during the breakout time. You want to ask it?
What? I don't remember.
Well, you asked. So then why are we saying that we need to do Avodas HaMoichin? Avodas HaMoichin, it's without bringing the faculty of Yisroel Sabba and Tevuna at all. And the Rebbe says in this Avodas HaMoichin Sicha, and it has to be Avodas HaMoichin Bifnei Atzma, just knowing God, no practical application. And you will be like, wait a second, what are we learning here? The whole chapter 2 is practical application, is being practical, how you put this two together. No, what do you say? You want to take
Do you
a chance?
get the question? Or it's too...
I'm sure the question is all the time. We have it in the back of our mind. This is not the first time we're asking this question. It's like, and then we tell you, oh, no, don't draw b'chein, no b'chein, right? Don't draw b'chein. Especially, is she here? Saratoga Best.
No, she...
If you're here, I see there's one phone number, but it looks like it's somebody else. We are consistently 11 people in the room. This is hilarious. It's amazing. This is like one below b'chushban, right? Is the level of
the phone is Gitty.
Oh, that's Gittin. Okay, good. Hi, Git. Yeah, Saratoga also joins for the phone, but hopefully, she'll join. But that's her question. It's like, what's the practical application? Right? And it's a legit question. And we're like, no, don't do b'chein. And you're like, so what should I do? How are we doing it? What's the answer? What do you think the answer? The Rebbe says, Avodas HaMoichin should be just to know God, not to worry about the midas, Rebbe says, clearly in that sicha, and also not to worry about the midas of other people. Just Avodas HaMoichin b'fnei atzma. How does it make sense? Well, there is an answer in the first paragraph. Remember? What does a Rav does when he doesn't know how to practically apply? What does he do? You bring a chicken to him and you say, is this kosher? And he is on the level of chagat, of nehi. And he's not chagat. He's not nehi of chagat, of chach, right? And you're like, oh, he's not there. What is he going to do? What?
He has to go back to his eon.
Beautiful. Yes, Elkalea. He has to go back to his eon. Everything is in the eon. When you do eon properly, you don't need to worry about anything. The application will just happen. Mimele, the Rebbe says. And the midas are going to be fixed mimele. You have issues with practical application? No problem. Go back to eon. You have problem with making decisions? Go back to eon. go back to Eon. The deeper you're going to get it in your Eon, it's going to happen. You're going to have the circuitry for it. It's just by design. Now, before, it wasn't like that. And this is the Chiddush of the Rebbe. Before, there were a lot of Ma'ayonos v'ikuvim. There were things on the way that prevented people from that. And therefore, people had to force the Bechein because they would never end the Hizbonenus process. It would never bring about. But now the Rebbe said the way is clear. Okay, we literally, in our generation, could experience Seder Hishtalshelus in its full way. The way it was meant to be. There is no darkness anymore that prevents us from achieving what we need to achieve, which is what? To know Hashem in all the details of our life. There's nothing stands in the way anymore. Before we had issues, before we had klippos preventing us, before we had the world is not ready, before the veil was very thick and wouldn't allow the light to penetrate, and therefore the people would walk in darkness. Then we saw tzaddikim being impoverished, right? A person might say, how could it be? We see a tzaddik, Reb Zusha of Annapolis, serving, Hashem in such a great way, and not manifesting wealth. How could that be? Can we say that he was lacking something in his avodah? No, not at all. But that was in Golus. In Golus, we see interesting things happening. But the Rebbe says it's Geula already. Geula in the Seder Hishtalshelus, everything is clear. All the pathways are clear. So what are we missing in Parshas V'Yakel Dvar Malchus? It's the shortest Dvar Malchus that we have. The Rebbe said everything is ready. Literally everything is ready. What are we missing? Pikude, details, right? Pikude is our internalization. And even that is not going to be as hard as people in all the generations used to do. Because within ourselves, the matter, the physicality of the world, the physicality of the Jewish body, it's all cleared. There's no blockages. If anybody's going to be walking around telling you that we have a problem with blockages, don't listen to them. There's no blockages anymore. The blockages is in our perception, our own perception that there are blockages. That's what's holding us. That we have a perception that something is holding us, not because it's actually holding us.
So, Mila, on that note, I think, we're at the 2-hour mark. And I think that's a good note to end on. We're going out of Mitzrayim. And you say the blockages, the Mitzrayims only exist in our mind at this point. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So we wish everybody kosher, Pelech and Pesach. We should all go out of our Mitzrayim, and that we should see each other on the other side, and we'll continue with this and, hopefully clarify it more. I think this chapter 2 is actually quite accessible. I'm sorry about the English translation. I think I need to really rework it so it makes it, sound more like English rather than like Hebrew. So maybe I'll do that if I have some time between cleaning. But yeah, let's, what, Mila, you want to end off just wishing everybody?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's, somebody just asked the question, does Tevuna affect Yisroel Sabba? No, I think it's the other way around. If you have Yisroel Sabba, you'll have Tevuna. Once the things has to get settled, and then it gets absorbed. Like we can't get something absorbed if it's not settled in our brain. Settled in the brain as an expression where things make sense. Like you literally, because you see, this could be a concept and it's beyond us. When we go through our Iyun process, the things become more and more settled within our brain, it makes sense to us in the internalization process. Like, oh, this is how it works. Oh, it's this and this. Oh, I'm getting it, right? I am getting it and I'm getting it. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, I feel comfortable with this concept. That's the hisyash process. And then the klita, when it gets fully absorbed in a circuitry to the point that you will never forget what you got.
So when is carving, when is it truly carved in? That's when you do
Tevuna.
times over and over and over again.
Yes and no, yeah, for sure. That's the hisbonenus process, is when we're going to go through the process of the hisbonenus over and over and over, that it becomes so clear to us, like the day. It's become part of us. Yeah, for sure. This is the reality. We need to remove the element of confusion. Remember, Bina is yesh. Yesh is very clear. Like, I have this beautiful boy sitting in my office. I'm not doubting his existence, right? He's as clear as sun to me, maybe more clear than sun. Now I don't see sun. It's cloudy in New York. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say. Yesh is so clear. There's no element of confusion. I'm very sure about what my perception is. And remember, essence of Hashem reveals itself in Bina, not in Chachma, not in a state of Yesh. Remember, Ekia Asher Ekia is the Bina that's going to be the dwelling place of the essence of Hashem. I know it sounds like, oh my gosh, what is she talking about? I have a backing of the Rebbe Sicha from Purim Tavshin Yud Ches, where the Rebbe says that the essence of Hashem gets revealed in Bina. Okay, and that's just, what it is. Because Bina has clarity. Bina is like, here we are. It's Chachma is like, do I exist? I don't exist. Where's Hashem? I'm longing. I'm confused. I want to go beyond. And we need both. Right? We need both. Because only with Bina, you can get it. It's like, it's the other flip side of the same coin. Of going back into the Ein Sof to bring down a new Yesh. Is going through that painful process of uncertainty, of letting go, of shedding what I perceived up until now, my bittul, that's the Chachma, and going back into unknown and bringing a new light in and making it Yesh again. And this process of Ratzo V'Shoiv is constant. It doesn't end. And it's fun process. So don't take away the pleasure aspect of it. Okay. Whew. Pesach Kasher V'Sameach. We should definitely let go of all our limitations happily, without holding on any aspect of our goals, and really inviting the Geula Amitis V'Shlema fully into our consciousness and have a ripple effect. All Bnei Israel.
Amen.
Amen.
And good luck with your kitchen.
I'll post pictures.
That's a good preparation for Geula, is redoing your kitchen.
And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Aratoa, did
Absolutely.
you just join